You're listening to Hockey Talk on the Rock
All right, stop.
with Laura and Keith.
It's interesting.
So let's back up a second.
He played absolutely out of his mind.
It made no sense to me.
And now,
well, I think
here are
we're
your
back,
hosts.
and it is Hockey Talk on the Rock. There's Laura. I'm Keith. Canucks played 3 games last week. I feel like that's probably going to take up the majority of what we talk about. So yeah, it is Friday, February 2021. I believe it's the 19th even. And take it away, Laura. How'd the week go?
Well, you know what? I actually thought it's probably been the best week the Canucks have had. They managed to get points in 3 of the 4 games versus Calgary, which I think is a pretty big deal for this team. And more than that, I think they actually deserved better. I think they shot themselves in the foot the first game against Calgary, and then the third game, basically with that Schmidt own goal fiasco. But I think that in general, they were the better team in that series, and the only reason why Calgary got anything out of it was because of Markstrom. And it'll be interesting to see how they play against a different team. But to me, and I didn't want them to do this to me, I was trying really hard not to have it happen. It kind of looks like they've started to figure it out. Their defensive systems look a lot better. They look like they're trying. And, you know, if the rest of the season doesn't go as planned and they continue to play this way, I'm not going to be mad.
Yeah, and I mean, you bring up a good point there with the practicing, because like they've actually had time to do some practices now, whereas realistically, like, you know, we've talked about how they've played more games than everybody else. They've had the busiest schedule and they haven't had time to practice. So, you know, half the defense being new and having to adapt to new systems and blah, blah, blah. So it is nice to see that now they've had a little bit of time. The systems seem to be in place. They're playing a lot better. And I got to admit, by the 4th game, though, I was kind of like over the Calgary games, you know, like I really like the 3-game series, I think. But by the 4th game, I certainly felt fatigue.
Yeah. Well, I also think that there wasn't, like, again, I don't know what's going on in Calgary, but there wasn't much of a bite. Like, normally, if you have Vancouver, Calgary, even if they're not playing multiple games against each other, there's some hate, there's some fight. And I just felt like, in general, they were kind of like, yeah, we're going to play this series. And there was a bit of stuff after the whistle, I think, in the 3rd game. But in general, it was pretty, like, just chill.
Pretty peaceful.
A lot of that, I think, is, like, on kind of Tkachuk, actually, because to me, he was I guess, the most invisible of the big players for Calgary. I think you could also throw in Monahan there. I don't think he had a good series against the Canucks. But for him to be effective, he has to be annoying. I mean, he doesn't have to be. He is a very skilled player. But I think that he can add that edge into a series. And he didn't do it. And I don't know. There's all sorts of rumors going on about Calgary right now. And whether or not they told them, like, to cut the crap kind of thing after all the stuff with the Leafs.
Yeah, I was listening to the radio on the way home, and I was just going to bring up that point.
Yeah.
Since then, apparently, that, like you're saying, they asked him to tone it down, and it's like, why would you ask a guy who thrives on that edge to tone it down?
But yeah, I don't know, like, again, with them, like, if Jeff Ward's job is safe. And it could be the case, you know, earlier this season, well, really, I'm going to say Montreal got a really nice advantage because they got to play Vancouver a ton when Vancouver was kind of having a meltdown. And it almost feels like Vancouver got, again, they got this a bit when they played Ottawa, obviously, but it feels like they've been given a bit of a gift by playing a team that's having as many dysfunctions as they are.
And man, I just gotta throw, doesn't your boy Boeser look like he's just having an awesome year?
Okay, so this is what I was going to say about Brock. Because in his rookie season, I distinctly remember I had a night class, and every time, like, after that class was over, I'd always check my phone to see who scored, and it was always Boeser. And I remember at one point thinking, like, how can he still be scoring this much? Because I think as a Canucks fan, we're accustomed to guys getting hot and then they just die. They die off. They don't produce any points. And to some degree, Boeser kind of did that for like 2 years after that season. But that first season, it was like every night he was on and he was scoring. And he looks like that again. And I still have that doubt in me that's like, okay, he's had a really hot start, but he's going to cool off. And yeah, like goal scorers usually do go through spells where they don't score. But just in general right now, Boeser looks so like
Well,
so on.
to me, it looks like before when he wasn't scoring, I thought his two-way game was noticeable, and like his compete level on the boards and stuff like that was noticeable.
Yeah.
And now I feel like when I'm watching him play, I'm like, wow, he's still doing the defensive 200-foot stuff really well, but now he's like his confidence in that wrist shot is definitely there.
Yeah. And he's starting to drive that line too, which is really nice to see on one level, but also frustrating on a different level. But like he's dragging them into the fight right now. And again, like I think JT Miller's played better the last week as well. I think he's a guy who's been noticeably better, and they talked about how having him on the penalty kill might have actually given him some confidence in his defensive play. And I think Pettersson has been again okay, but not the level that he could be. So we'll see kind of what happens there. The other guy I wanted to give a little bit of a shout out to is Olli Juolevi because I think that was definitely his best week. He looked good defensively, and he's not fast, which is obviously I'd say his number one knock, but his positioning looked really good. And so if he can work something out there, maybe he's got something.
Yeah, no, I was talking earlier this week, and I think when we talked earlier in the season, I remember mentioning that like when Juolevi was getting to the lineup, he looked kind of like soft. I don't know if I talked to you about that, but he kind of looked a little, maybe it was hesitation, but he looked pretty soft. I remember thinking early on. And I was just saying earlier this week before the fourth game with Calgary, that his last 5 or 6 games were like much different. Like that softness wasn't there anymore. And his, like I was gonna, like you said, the positioning and the stick play and being in the right spot and doing the right thing and being like having a little bit of a bite to it almost was noticeable. And I thought he played really well. He wasn't the worst defense out there, that's for sure.
No, I think he's starting to grow into himself in the NHL, I guess. And I hope that it continues and it's not a one-off thing because, like, you know, over Benning's whole tenure, it's him and Jake that are going to be the 2 first-round draft picks that everyone talks about. And again, I don't think he's ever going to be like what you'd expect from a high first-round pick, but if he can be a serviceable, you know, even top 4 defenseman, it would be really nice. But even just a regular defenseman at this stage, I would take.
I could see him fitting like a Brent Seabrook type mold.
That would be nice. That would be ideal, I think.
Not getting, you know, just not being on the offensive side of things. Doesn't seem like he's going to be that type of guy.
I don't think so, no. And I mean, it's okay, right? They have Hughes. So, like, on that front, they're fine for an offensive defenseman. And like Schmidt as well is able to contribute, and he'll start contributing more. I mean, he got the goal last week, but like offensively, he's able to contribute. Juolevi for this team doesn't need to, which is nice, right? But,
right.
Yeah.
So, hey, I wanted to ask you, probably my favorite player this season for the Canucks has been Hoglander. Just because he's like a little buzzsaw, and man, I swear if that guy hit the net on, you know, most of his shots, he would probably be an all-star, right? But
so I said that like at the beginning, I think, of this Calgary series. I said, you know, man, I really like Hoglander, but he misses the net like every time he shoots the puck. And then Shorty picked up on, like, said something about it, I think last game. And I was like, okay, I'm glad that someone else has noticed it, because he almost felt like untouchable to say something about Hoglander that wasn't positive. But he'll get there. I think, like, it feels like he plays a lot like Jannik Hansen, except he's got more skill. And I mean that in the sense that he wears 36, which has been throwing me off. He's smaller than Hansen, but he's a, again, like you say, he's a little buzz out there. Like he goes around and he's just creating stuff all the time. Difference is that he has a higher hockey IQ and higher skill. But he reminds me a lot of Honey Badger.
So my question was going to be, I think maybe it was before the last game, he was tied third in rookie scoring. Do you think there's a chance that 4 years in a row the Canucks could have a Calder finalist?
So I think there's a chance, but I will say, like, I think that right now, like, there's Kaprizov in Minnesota who's had a good start to his season, and then there's also Lankinen, like the goalie in Chicago, who wanted
Tim Stützle as well.
Yeah, and he looks pretty good. I think there is a chance, and because it doesn't seem like this class is going to completely light up the board, I think he could get a nomination. I doubt he wins it, but I think he could sneak into the top 3. But it would be really cool. I'd be really happy, obviously, for the Canucks, and that's, yeah. He's been the positive story the whole way through, right? Like, he's been the guy who's been giving it his all every night, and it's noticeable. And I thought that last game against Calgary, that Horvat line with Hoglander was by far the Canucks' best line. And again, for years now, Horvat has had to work with wingers who aren't necessarily top 6 quality. And if he could find someone to play with regularly, that would be awesome. So I really hope that they can build some chemistry. But,
All right. One thing I want to quickly throw out there before moving on to the jerseys because of tonight, is before Bailey got hurt, I really enjoyed watching that line of, was it Sutter, Gaudette, and Bailey?
Yeah.
I thought that they looked actually pretty good, and Bailey was on Philly before he was in Vancouver.
Right.
He came over in a trade for like a half season from Buffalo.
Yeah.
And I thought he looked good then as well in Philly, and I was disappointed he went. And it sucks that he got hurt because I think he could have probably fit in and maybe even stuck.
Yeah, I liked his speed. I really liked that, obviously, and I thought he had a bit of grit to his game as well, which was promising. And again, any Canuck that is making not a ton of money and is playing on the bottom 6 is a good thing for Vancouver. So yeah, that was too bad. And I mean, you hope that you see him at some point this season, but you might not.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I forgot what I was gonna say after that. Just in general, I think that Gaudette has been noticeably better after being scratched, and I feel like it's been, basically every game he's been good. And I don't mean like an all-star. I just mean that he's been not like a defensive liability, and he's been creating some chances on that third line as well. I still think that, like, there's something there with Gaudette, but I don't know if in Vancouver he'll ever be able to play the role that will really suit him best. And I would maintain what I've said now for, I think, a season. I think he'd fit nicer on a wing on a second line. I don't know if he can produce at that rate. He can't right now, but I think that would be ideal for him. He's not a third line checking center.
Right.
So I don't know. Anyway, personally speaking, I think if the Canucks trade him right now, it depends on what they get back for him, but I don't think you move him yet. And we'll see. But I mean, I would assume he's going to have more trade value than Virtanen, which is probably why he's out there.
Agreed. So tonight they're playing the Jets. Is he due? Is he going to score one finally then? Got it.
I mean, I would like to see that. I have a theory that Virtanen's going to score tonight. But I'm not like super strong.
Like, I would take that bet. I think I'd take that bet.
It just feels like he's gonna get one sometime here, and it will, make everyone all excited for a day or whatever. He can't continue to be this invisible I mean, I guess maybe he can. It's the same thing I said about Bobrovsky. He's gonna have to have a bounce back season, and then he's just sucked. But like, you got to think he's gonna be somewhat involved in the play at some point here. Anyway, that's all my Virtanen talk.
Okay. Tonight you were talking earlier about the jerseys. We wore the same ones. Because the Canucks are playing the Jets tonight, and they're playing with their retro reverse jerseys on for the first time, which will be cool.
Yeah.
And you were definitely right in your suspicion that I was going to wear the Arizona jersey tonight, but because it was reverse retro, I threw this one on. So basically did exactly what you did.
That's funny. So speaking of Arizona, I don't know if you saw the article in The Athletic about the Coyotes.
I've heard a lot about this article, but I haven't taken the time, no.
Okay, so I read it, and it is like, basically, it's quite long, and each paragraph you're like, okay, that's gotta be it. And then there's another one, and it's just this like shady and kind of, she says like finger pointing in the article, but that organization is like just a complete mess. And from the way that it was described, like by Benning and the league being like, oh, the Coyotes now have a super like good group of invested owners that they've never had before, and they're gonna pour all this money into the team. And you're thinking, okay, this is kind of a positive, like maybe they'll make it work in Arizona. And then this article comes out, and I'm just gonna like say a couple things about it. Basically, the reporter said she got interested in this topic because she heard that during the playoff bubble, the players on the Coyotes weren't getting like their daily per diems that everyone else in the league was getting, and she thought that was kind of weird. And then she dug a little deeper, and it turned out that a bunch of the players who had player bonuses didn't get paid them on time. And I think the only reason they did get paid was because the players have a union, right? So they did get paid. But then it's like these owners haven't paid the arena for like the rental for the games and for the practices. They haven't paid the charter airlines for flying the planes and all like just all this stuff that they haven't paid. And then there's like more, right? There's the whole Mitchell Miller thing. There's like a sexual harassment thing. And then right before this article came out, Doug Armstrong, so the new GM of the Coyotes, phones up this reporter and basically threatens her and gives her a lecture on ethics and journalism, and then it's like, whoever wrote this piece is going to go to jail and all this shit, right? And again, I said this in the summer, and I just say it again now. I don't know how much longer they can keep pushing like this team in Arizona.
That's kind of a reason that I sucked it up and bought a jersey too, because I was like, I don't know how long they're going to be a team anymore.
It's just like one thing after another. You look at their team, and again, we've talked about this, but like this season, they're basically a cap team. They don't have their first round draft pick for next year. They didn't have their first round draft pick last year or a second. Then they picked Miller, so they didn't basically have a third because they gave up on him, right? Yeah. After everything came out about it. And like it boggles my mind how it can be that messed up. Anyway, I think that maybe we'll get to see a team in Quebec because it's either going to be there or Houston. But I think if they needed to move it fast, Quebec makes more sense. And it would be pretty cool, but we'll see. And
they do know they're balanced now, right? When Seattle comes in, they're a balanced league for 16 on each side.
Yeah. And so Arizona would be the team that would move out of the Pacific as well.
And then so it would have to have Columbus or somebody move into the West?
Well, like Arizona's gonna move into whatever what's the division called now? That's not the Pacific in the West.
The Atlantic.
The Atlantic. No, that's the other one. That's on the East, right? Well, you're talking if they move to Quebec.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So they'd have to go into the Atlantic, and then I guess Columbus or who else could move?
Detroit wouldn't want to because they were dying to move back to the East for years.
Yeah.
So I think it would probably be, I don't know, Columbus. Ooh.
Yeah, Columbus, Dallas.
Dallas is already in the West though.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, I think it would be. It makes sense. Columbus sucks. Everyone hates them anyway.
Yeah, no, it's been a rough go, and yeah, I don't think we're gonna get another expansion for quite a while because, as you say, it's balanced. But I think that maybe we see some teams move, and that would be my first bet. But they've been so consistent. And then the other thing is that the owners of the Coyotes, I just learned this like earlier this afternoon. The reason people say why they want to have a sports team is because they own a casino in Vegas. And in order to have like a sports betting license, you have to own a team. So
Oh,
it's like really advantageous to them, right, to own it basically. So anyway, that's my Coyotes talk. I do
okay.
have a couple other notes. So I kind of want to talk about two teams that have started really well that no one expected, and then two teams that have been really disappointing that maybe we expected, but maybe we didn't expect.
Okay.
The two that have done very well are Chicago and Florida, and I don't know which one of them actually impresses me more because Chicago, like at the beginning of the season, I thought they were going to be like the worst team in their division. I thought they were going to have a horrible time keeping the puck out of the net. I didn't trust their defense. I didn't know where they were going to get any scoring from. And this Kevin Lankinen has come in and he's like been a rock star for them. I was going to check what the score was because I know they were down earlier today. But he seems to have taken that position and run with it. Again, it's hard to tell with rookie goalies because sometimes they have a really hot start and then they cool off, but he seems like he's the real deal right now. And then Patrick Kane has been Patrick Kane, unfortunately, because I still don't like him, but it is impressive what he's doing at, his age and with the cast around him. So I think it's pretty cool, and they could very well make the playoffs, which I don't think anyone saw coming. And then with Florida, the thing about them that I find interesting is like for the past, I want to say 2 years, I've been like, yeah, I could see Florida making the playoffs, and then they've just sucked. And so this year I was like, there's no way they're not going to do it. It's basically the same team with like some minor changes. And again, Bobrovsky's been crap, and they've been riding their backup goalie, this Chris Dreger or something. And they're like 10-2-2 or something.
Yeah, they're so screwed with that Bobrovsky contract. There's still 5 more years after this.
Yeah.
And like, this Reeder guy looks all right. And they've also got that Spencer Knight kid from US World Juniors or whatever coming up too.
Yeah.
Look pretty good. Who was the other team you mentioned there? Chicago.
Chicago.
Yeah, they've been impressive too. Hey, all these young kids coming out of nowhere.
Yeah. And again, like, you're like, okay, they can't keep it up, but then they keep doing okay. And like, yeah, I know they've played, Detroit a bunch, and that division's not necessarily the strongest, but I still would not have picked Chicago out of that group to make the playoffs.
No, me neither. But we both did not, definitely. And we definitely made fun of Florida in one of our past talks, being like, yeah, Florida's big additions this season with Judas and Hornquist. And
Yeah, I know, and Hornquist has looked awesome.
oh, I'm just getting so mad seeing how much Hornquist is scoring right now.
But again, like, I'm like, he can't keep it up, right? Like, but maybe he does. I guess he was pissed off and just went for it.
Oh, you get one. I mean, he's either playing with Huberdeau or Barkov too. That's pretty good.
Yeah, and then like Carter Verhaeghe scored like a crazy amount of goals, and again is playing with Barkov, and you're like, okay, I get it, but how can he? Yeah. Anyway, my two kind of disappointing teams that I want to talk about. So the first one is Nashville, and I didn't think Nashville was going to be that good, but I also didn't think they were going to look this bad. And they're a team that might be screwed for a long time because they have the two contracts that, again, I think everyone realized were going to look bad, but I don't know how, like, kind of like the Louis Eriksson in a way, like it was going to look bad, but was it going to look bad that fast? Where they have Matt Duchene and Ryan Johansson both making $8 million for I think like 5 more years.
Wow.
And neither one of those guys, I think Johansson is hurt right now, but neither one of those guys have looked good. Forsberg has looked all right, but I think everyone else offensively hasn't produced for Nashville. And then actually Pekka Rinne has played better than UC Soros this year, which I also don't think anyone really predicted. And I wonder, about David Poile, how long he's going to be around in Nashville for, because you kind of think that the blame's going to fall on him. But they've looked terrible.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough too because he's like a legacy GM at this point because he's still the only one, right?
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah, I mean, I can see Nashville turning it around. They did it a bit at the end of last year before the pause.
Yeah.
Started turning around and getting more consistent. They certainly have the, roster to do so, I think. Who was the other team?
So the other team I have is the Rangers. And again, I think that, like, I didn't see them being a playoff team this year. I didn't pick them in the top 4 of that division, but I didn't think they'd be, like, worse than New Jersey, which right now they are. And again, they just look like a team that doesn't have an identity and can't really do anything. I know they beat your boys last night, but your boys also didn't have like half their team dressed, so but there's something going on there, and you wonder how long they're gonna keep it going before there's a change in that locker room. I don't know if there's a coaching change perhaps, or just a trade of some sort if they start getting rid of contracts for being like a seller. But Zibanejad has looked horrendous. He might be up there in the most disappointing players for this year, for kind of what I've seen.
Yeah, he was a player that I really wanted to take in our draft high, and he went like pretty early, and I'm super happy that he did.
Yeah. Anyway, and kind of on that note, to the other team in New York that's not called New York, but Buffalo has also been horrendous. And you know what that's going to mean because of the time of the year and how long he's been in the league, but that automatically starts the Jack Eichel rumors again. And the 2 teams that he is heavily rumored to go to are the Rangers and the LA Kings, which is interesting because I think both of those teams could probably offer up a package that might interest Buffalo. But if you're trading away, a top 5 center in the NHL, I'm going to say, in the prime of his career, like, you're going to have to get back a ton. But Buffalo's a team that's so flawed in how they've brought up their prospects and just the construction of their roster that trading Eichel might actually be the only logical thing to do. Because
I don't know. They're talking about how Ralph Kruger might not be the guy.
Oh, really?
He might be part of the problem too, because they said like it was only like 2 games or 3 games that he played Eichel and Hall together, and before switching up the lines, and like not really allowing the guys to get proper chemistry, Yeah.
And evidently, like, Hall has said that he wants to stay or has expressed interest in staying in Buffalo, which is also interesting because you would think that they could flip him and get quite a lot for him at the deadline, right?
Well, that's what he's gonna say, though, right? Publicly, that's what he said. He wanted to stay in Arizona too, right?
Yeah. Anyway, we'll see how that works out. I have like a couple more things here.
Yeah.
So one of them is kind of building off what we talked last week with Pittsburgh and what they're going to do. And we both kind of agreed that Crosby was probably going to stay and all that. But then I heard a bunch of rumors about how Crosby might want to join up with his good buddy from Cole Harbor in Colorado. And that one intrigues me because I think Colorado, again, would have pieces that they could actually trade for Crosby. And I don't think it's going to happen this season. I'm just saying in the future, because you think about their blue line, and right away they have both Byram and Makar, And I think they could probably actually part with one of those two pieces. So you start, let's say, with Byram. I would say you'd even have to throw in like a Rantanen or a Landeskog, right? And
Mhm.
then you add in picks. But I think there's something there, and I could see it happening.
Hmm.
If it's not Montreal, which is the other one everyone wants because that was his team or whatever, but I say Crosby ends up in Colorado.
Yeah, I'm gonna say Crosby ends up in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with that theory.
I don't think it's this year, but I just think at some point I see it happening.
Okay.
I
I
see it
and
signing another
I
guy.
also don't see them trading Byram. I
No.
think they're gonna realize that he is. I think he might end up being better than Cale Makar at one point.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could flip one or the two is basically what I'm saying, but we'll see, we'll see. And so then we actually did have some trades in the NHL this week, all of which involved the same player.
Right.
So the first trade was Paquette and Galchenyuk for
Find the single.
for Ryan DeSingle. And I don't know if you want to give your winner or participant ribbon for that.
I think I want to give the winner to Ottawa. I think.
I honestly think this is a tie, and I'll say why. I think that Ryan DeZingle only works in Ottawa. I think that in Columbus and Carolina, he looked like a fourth line player, and for some reason, when he was in Ottawa, he worked for that team and he was able to score. So, from a Senators perspective, I think getting him back makes a lot of sense. But I think that Paquette makes more sense for Carolina because that team already has their skill players. And again, I think for a fourth liner, Paquette's a good addition. And Carolina looks pretty stacked this year. So that move to me makes sense for them. If I'm Carolina, I'd rather have Paquette than DeZingle on my fourth line, basically. And then
Yeah.
Galchenyuk is like a throw-in, which at this point, they basically just got prospects for him to send him to Toronto. And that move, I don't know if I can give you a winner or participant ribbon on that move because I think that the Leafs trading for Galchenyuk is basically them just admitting that Jimmy Vesey is not working out for them in the role that they envisioned for him. But I don't know if Galchenyuk will be any better. However, this is his last shot, and it's the Leafs who can score goals, as we saw. So maybe it works, but I don't think it was going to work in Carolina for him. And I know that one of the picks they gave up was a high second rounder. So you never know with those guys. I'll give it to Toronto, I guess, on potential, but
I think I'll defend my first one, saying that I gave Ottawa the winner with DeZingle because I think he'll be given more of the role that he will succeed in. Whereas you said, like in Carolina, they're super skilled, so he was kind of buried there. As well as from what I read, Paquette wasn't stoked in Ottawa. Like and they said it was mainly going from like the championship team to like the bottom feeder, and he wasn't the value of Paquette is much different for Carolina than it was for Ottawa because he wasn't giving that bite and that snarl and that role that he's used to giving because he wasn't into it. So I think if he gets rejuvenated with being on a good winning team there in Carolina, they'll be benefiting from this. But that's why I think Ottawa wins, because Paquette's worth in Ottawa wasn't the same
as what it would be.
You know what I'm saying? And then, like you say, Galchenyuk was just a throw-in because he already wasn't working in Ottawa. But I think I'll move on to the second one and agree with you in saying I think I would give the win to Toronto. Sorry. And the double participant ribbon to Carolina in this situation, I guess, because I mean, it doesn't sound like the prospects have a great chance of becoming super good players or NHL or whatever. And Galchenyuk, you never know. The only thing I feel like is being maybe surrounded by, the Nylander, Marner, Matthews, like young snipers might something for him, if anything will.
Yeah,
know?
I don't know. I'd say this is his last chance. Like it's here, and then it would be KHL. So if he wants to make it work, then he's in a good position to do it. I assume they'll probably let him play with Tavares and Nylander at some point. But we'll see.
We will see. It'll be interesting to see. I like it.
On that kind of Leafs note, I do have a note about Matthews and then McDavid because the two of them have been on these unreal starts. Matthews looks like he can score 50 and 50, which I feel like every other year we have a person in the league where it looks like it's going to happen and then it doesn't. But this is the closest that I would be to believing that someone.
Oh man,
Yeah.
16 and 16 is pretty incredible because like he's missed a game, so he hasn't played all the games. But
Yeah.
It's like normally, like you say, there's someone that comes out on fire with like 11 and 8 or something, but this is sustained long enough that it seems like, wow, this is crazy.
This is legit. And then just like with the whole divisions, like the North, the scoring has been so much higher than every other division.
Yeah.
I think that plays like a hand, I guess, in both of these guys because McDavid could realistically get 100 points in a 56 game season. But again, I if I was gonna bet, which was what I was gonna ask you on which one is more likely, Matthews to get 50 and 50 or McDavid to get 100 points this season, I think I would take Matthews right now. And
I think I would take McDavid on that, but go ahead.
I don't know. Like again, I think both could happen, which would be just ridiculous. I thought the highest point someone was going to get would be like in the 80s this year, but you never know.
Yeah, I think that's far-fetched too. I mean, when I was doing my nerd homework or whatever, I was looking at like projections for the year based on, and they had like McDavid and Draisaitl as the top two, I think, coming in, but I think they had them at like 77 and 75
Yeah.
or something like that. So yeah, I mean, I could see maybe 80. It's hard for me to believe at this point, but you never know.
I don't know. I think it will be close. It will be close to 100 is what I think.
Think so?
Yeah, if he doesn't get hurt, obviously. But I think like with this division, there's just so many nights where it seems like the score is getting run up. Like when they were playing the Jets, who are a decent team defensively because of their goaltender, it was what 6-5 that score of that game.
Yeah.
And I think that the scoring in this division is gonna go down a bit because teams are gonna figure each other out. They always do, right? But I don't know. I think there's a chance.
Okay, we'll see.
I'm gonna take Matthews 50 and 50.
Okay.
Anyway, I've got two more notes. They're super quick.
Okay.
The first one is the whole situation in Dallas and why that's important. So they've been canceling games because of the weather down there. And Dallas already missed like 2 weeks at the beginning of the year because of their COVID stuff. So if they're going to make up all these games, they would have to play 44 games in 78 days, which I think is pretty impossible. And what I don't understand in general is because they canceled games all week between Dallas and Tampa, but why couldn't the NHL have just moved those games to Tampa? Like I get the first one because they canceled it too late, but then there's two other games where I think if you were trying to make up games in your shortened schedule, you'd say, okay, we'll play them in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's just something to keep an eye on. I've heard rumors that Dallas isn't going to play all of next week too, which sucks for both my fantasy leagues. So I'm a bit pissed off. I'm joking. Kind of, only half joking. It doesn't really bug me. And yeah, I don't think Dallas is going to play 56 games this year. That's all I'm going to say.
All right, another hot take that we'll see about, I guess.
And then my last point, which is another like more like Laura was wrong about something and this contract looks awful point is about Erik Karlsson in San Jose, who I know now is injured or he was hurt. He might be back now. And again, He's one of those guys that I was like, okay, he's gonna have had basically a full year off, and he'll get way better because he's gonna, be rejuvenated and actually be healthy for the first time since his ankle injury, and he just looks like shit.
Yeah.
And that contract looks awful.
5 more years at 11 million a year, right? Yeah, they were talking about that one and the Jeff Skinner contract and his next 6 years at 9 million.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you earlier who you would rather have, Jeff Skinner or Ryan Johansson at their current value and contract.
Oh, Johansson, easy.
Really? I don't know. I think
I
they're
think Skinner's done. I think Skinner's done. I think Johansson just gets hurt.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, there's some doozies of contracts out there in the NHL, and it makes me feel a little bit better about the Canucks, except then you remember that it's their, bottom six and not their top players that are having those problems. But I'm happy. I honestly think I'm happier with having Louis Eriksson on my team right now than Jeff Skinner.
There you go.
So, yeah, it's my last hot take of the night.
Very good. All right. Well, that's your last note for the night as well.
It is.
All righty. Well, we're going to call it a night. Another week, another hockey talk on the Rock, and get looking forward to the big game.
Sounds good. Go Canucks.
Hope that these sweet jerseys bring them the luck tonight, and hope they look good with the jerseys. And tentatively, we'll talk again next Friday.
Woohoo!
All right. Thanks for listening, anybody.